Heavy fighting has continued over the last 24 hours in the eastern Donetsk region, the Ukrainian military said on March 27, with Russia continuing to press against the destroyed town of Bakhmut, a focal point of attacks by Wagner mercenaries and Russian forces in the east, and also increasingly targeting Avdiivka, another Donetsk town. Russian strike forces continue to bombard military and infrastructure targets indiscriminately, causing damage and casualties among civilians. Ukraine's top military commander, Valery Zaluzhny, said last week that the situation in and around Bakhmut, where Russian mercenaries from the private Wagner group led an assault on the town, had stable amid heavy losses suffered by Russian troops. A recent footage shows fighters from the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces destroying the reconnaissance company of the Russian invaders' 10th Tank Regiment. The video shows one tank and 2 Russian infantry fighting vehicles being destroyed. Up to a dozen interventionists' bodies are clearly visible in the video. Among them, the enemy was actively shelled by the Ukrainian drones, but most were lying near the destroyed vehicles and also in the trenches. It can be assumed that some of the attackers ran, but were crushed back by the Ukrainians. After a successful counterattack, the Ukrainian Armed Forces managed to regain control of a portion of the area along the E40 highway north of Bakhmut. In turn, domestic military expert and authorized Frontline charter deep state noted little progress by Russian interventionists on a small section of the front north of Bakhmut. But in general, the situation in Bakhmut's direction has hardly changed, which of course is rather the defeat of the Russian aggressors, who are waging continuous attacks. Writing in its daily updates on Facebook, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said 15 tanks had been destroyed, along with another 15 armored personnel carriers. 8 Russian artillery systems and 2 unmanned aerial vehicles had also been destroyed in the previous 24 hours. The Ukrainian military has repeatedly shared online footage of Russian tanks being targeted, and many Western analysts say Russia has suffered heavy tank losses at Ukrainian hands during the war. Meanwhile, on the Russian side, in its daily report on Saturday, the Russian Defense Ministry said Ukraine had lost 8,399 tanks and other armored fighting vehicles since February 24, 2022. Last week, the Ukrainian military warned that Avdiivka could become a second Bakhmut, which has been reduced to rubble in what both sides called a meat grinder. Russia continues to attack Bakhmut, while Ukrainian troops repelled more than 60 attacks in the last 24 hours on the Eastern Front, some of which led to Avdiivka, Ukraine's General Staff said Monday. In response, the Ukrainian Air Force carried out 3 attacks on Russian troops, while missile and artillery units reportedly targeted command posts, 4 troop concentrations, weapons and military equipment, radio electronic equipment stations, and ammunition depots. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian counteroffensive looks unlikely for several weeks, as troops from the Russian Wagner mercenary group bombard Bakhmut and draw ever closer to seizing control of the city. However, that effort cost a lot of manpower and resources, and now seems to have slowed down. Russian troops have launched more than 200 raids in the area in the last 24 hours alone, but are losing hundreds of people daily in their efforts. The Russian airborne forces are playing a bigger role in the fighting around Bakhmut due to increasing losses to the private military company Wagner, the Ukrainian military says. It's not that Wagner is retreating, but because of heavy losses, they have to be reinforced by units of the regular army of the Russian Federation, especially by the airborne troops. Sergei Cherevety, spokesman for the Eastern Armed Forces Group, told Ukrainian television Friday. Russian forces in the area conduct several dozen sorties every day. There were 32 exchanges of fire over the last day in and around Bakhmut, Cherevety said, adding that there were also airstrikes launched by fixed-wing aircraft and attack helicopters. Artillery is a much bigger influencing factor on military operations there than aviation, he said. On the other hand, The Ukrainian military quickly retracted earlier claims that Russian troops had withdrawn from the strategic town of Nova Kakhovka in Ukraine's southern Kherson region. That was after Russian officials and military bloggers denounced the report. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said the error was the result of using the available data incorrectly. Serhiy Cherevety also said the eastern city of Bakhmut remains the enemy's main focus of attack, as it is difficult to say whether the intensity of the Russian offensive around Bakhmut has reduced due to factors such as weather, unit rotation or reserves brought in by the Russians. However, he said Russia's tactics remain the same as small tactical groups trying to weaken our defenses. He said soldiers from Wagner's mercenary group were near Bakhmut, with Russian troops providing reinforcements if needed. Cherevety made the difference between fighting for Bakhmut and fighting elsewhere. He said further north, Wagner was lacking in evidence around Lyman and Kupiansk, where regular Russian troops, backed by Luhansk militia, had carried out more than 400 sorties over the last few days. The main task now is to defend, drain the enemy's forces, while units are being trained both in Ukraine and abroad, equipped with new defense equipment and coordinated, Cherevety said. In and around the town of Avdiivka, in the Donetsk region, Russian bombing and airstrikes continued against Ukrainian defenses. The whole time we were in the city there were explosions. We didn't see a single building that was not damaged. Unfortunately, there are still civilians in Avdiivka. People live in basements. Military spokesman Oleksiy Mytrishkivsky said. Mytrishkivsky said the Russians were trying to bypass the city, and these attacks were constantly accompanied by shelling. Yesterday, the enemy managed to carry out 26 attacks and suffered significant losses. More than 100 people were killed and more than 240 injured, he claimed. During the day, they attacked with the help of planes, artillery, and manpower. They suffered heavy losses in manpower and equipment.